recording.
Awesome, awesome. Welcome everyone. I know we got a few people still kind of coming in here. And so just to kind of kick things off, I won't go into too much about the actual talk today. We'll just go some quick slides that we do for the majority of our events. So for those of you who are new, I don't know if you guys can raise your hand. I see some of you here. So if you're new, raise your hands. Welcome. If you're someone who's been to these before, welcome as well. We have a number of people kind of still joining us. So for those of you who are new, talk a little bit about the IxDA and really what that entails, right? So we're a local organization. We're the local chapter for the Interaction Design Association. If you're familiar with the IxDA, right, it's a global organization, started in 2003. There's over 100,000 different members, over 200 local groups and growing. And as it relates to us and in this local chapter, the main mission that we're going through, we exist to really kind of bring designers from all backgrounds, domains, and disciplines within the realm of interaction design. What does that entail? What is interaction design? Anything around user experience, anything that has to do with that interaction between any sort of technology and humans, right? The empathy that we can build and everything that entails, not just in UX, but recently you guys have seen some of the different series we've done around accessibility, and this is a continuation of that, which I know Marcelo and the guys can talk a little more through that. As part of our local team, we have a number of different people that have been a part of this. We have a number of sponsors and people that have always been so supportive. And in this case, I know Snisana, you're here, so you can talk maybe a little bit about some of the work that Ironhack. I know we're using some of the different technology for that. But really, the main focus about this is it's about you guys, right? This is all about the community. Right now, we're about 1,600 plus and growing. And if you have any sort of topics, if there's anything that really speaks to you that you've been involved with, especially now in light of COVID, is there anything interesting that you're working on as far as disciplines that perhaps may not be so common, right? Anything that has to do with research or accessibility, or perhaps you have a passion for building design systems, like whatever that is, it's all about being able to actually provide a platform for all of you. And before we would do kind of live events and in person. Now I think it's easier. So if we don't have to do all the planning, if you have any specific talks, I know there's a lot of members with the community that have reached out and say, hey, look, I'm Joel or Marcelo, like I'm working on these initiatives. How can I get involved? By all means, reach out to myself, reach out to Marcelo, reach out to Claudio or Jonathan. I mean, there's a lot of great people that have been instrumental to the growth of the community. And if there's anything that we can do to support you in that process, right? Perhaps you're someone who's looking to get into the industry or ways that we may be able to provide that support as a community. That's what it's all about. And more importantly, I think as we start to bring together in partnerships with UX and Fajitas and other organizations, there's a lot of interesting things coming. So we'll leave some of that probably towards the end. But definitely welcome. I'm excited for this, for this workshop. And with that, I'll go ahead and hand it over to you, Jonathan or Marcelo, to kind of kick things off for this meeting.
Yeah, let me just add a couple slides here, and very quick, and just want to recognize the folks that has helped us throughout the years. Obviously, UX Fajitas, this is another event from South Florida here. We use IxDA for strategic user experience, and UX and Fajitas more for tactical, like we teach products like we're doing today. And if you want to learn about service design, it's more interaction design, it's more with IxDA. Obviously, we want to thank all the local boot camps, Ironhack and WinCode, like producing enough talent every other month to help us stay engaged and active as community leaders. SoFlux is another local South Florida user experience group that you might want to check it out. Fluxia, you can go to that URL this evening, join in, because that's pretty much where all the designers are gathering, and we share links, we share resources, and we share a bunch of material, and we have a great time in our Slack community. Your Portfolio Sucks is another group that we have locally that we help young professionals to do portfolio reviews. And that's it. So I'll hand it over to Jonathan, who's going to introduce the presenter, the guest speaker of the night.
Thanks, everyone. All right, so real quick, Marcelo, I sent you a doc link. See if you can put that into the meetup page. That way I can kind of direct people there so they can download the resources, because we don't have a chat feature right now.
Sure. What I'll do is I'll create a bit.ly link, easy enough for everyone to go down, and we'll share here somewhere.
Okay. Sounds good. All right, let me share my screen. All right. So the much anticipated meetup is here. We got an Adobe XD challenge with Matt Reyes, an XD instructor at Adobe, thought leader in the space, got a lot of experience in the UX world. But before we get started, I definitely want you guys to go ahead and jump into the meetup page and look for the link that's, let me see, let me refresh the page. Did you already put it in there, Marcelo?
I'm doing that right now.
Okay. So make sure you go here, because there are a couple links and resources that we'd like you to download as we kind of walk through this workshop, so that you're well equipped with all the things that Matt Ray is going to be teaching you guys on XD. So just
You're
give
going to
us
put on in a discussion of resources.
okay. Let me know
Just
when
publish that if you want to refresh, and I don't know if you see the link.
Where'd you put it?
On UX and Fajitas, on a discussions page.
I don't see it. We got a link to submissions.
All right.
Refresh. Time. Sorry for the delay, guys. Give me 1 sec. I want to make sure you guys are all set.
I also created a bit.ly link, which is bit.ly/ADB for Adobe XD. So see if that link works, and that will take you to the resource page as well.
Where did you put it in the meetup page, Marcelo? I can't see it. I don't find it.
It's, I see what it did. I put it on overall.
Just put it in the details section.
Yeah, Marcelo, you have it in the main group and not the event page. So
Yeah. Put it in details as well. The thing is, I cannot add to the actual content of the event because it's being.
Got it. Okay, so if you go to the meetup page, UX and Fajitas, where you initially RSVP'd, in the comments section, Marcelo put this link in there. Just make sure you click, and you'll basically get this document here. So this would be the link that you would use after we finish this event, so that you can submit your design prototype based off of the challenge that we have going on. But this little section right here has all the links provided by Matt. So just make sure you download whatever's in these links right here for the workshop, so we can get started and kick this meeting off. All right, so before I give it away to Matt, I just want to make sure that everybody gets this. Because you participated and you're here, here's a link and a code to get some a free Adobe XD swag. It'll get shipped directly to your home, free of charge. This is just a big thank you from Adobe and us for being, a fan, coming to our events, and being a huge fan of Adobe XD. So make sure you screenshot this and put in this code so you can get the free Adobe swag.
Thanks, Adobe. Yeah.
All right, Matt, it's all yours.
All right. Get my screen going. Okay. So, hello, everybody. Once again, here's that link. Jump back to that in a second. But what you're all here for is learning about accessibility in design and prototyping, specifically in Adobe XD. So let's launch this.
Hello.
Oh, right. I forgot. I put in a test. That was a test. Could you all hear that? Hopefully. So I'm Matt Ray, as Jonathan mentioned. I'm a design advocate here at Adobe XD. And I'm coming from a wide variety of experiences in design over the last decade, from EdTech and travel to marketing tech and autonomous vehicles, all over the map. And I recently, kind of in the last couple of years, started picking up XD as it had some of these kind of superpowers over other tools that really helped me accelerate my design workflow. And some of those are what we're going to talk about today. But really the main goal of XD is creating an end-to-end user experience design platform that can equip teams to create some of the best experiences in the world. And so you'll notice there's some features in XD that really don't exist in other tools. And one of those is what we're going to talk about today, and that's voice. But these little icons along the bottom just show that we've got some different platforms, so Apple and Windows, preview on Android and iOS. Today, we're definitely going to be talking about sound, audio, and voice. And then naturally, integrations with Creative Cloud and a growing plugin ecosystem as well for the things that aren't built in. And it's also great for presentations. You can do it directly in. So that's my little pitch. I love doing presentations in XD now. But today we're really here to talk about accessibility, and there's really a couple different tools that can help you design for accessibility. So the first ones we'll talk about are really Stark as a primary plugin for checking contrast, checking against color blindness, just things that can help you kind of check in on your design to make sure that you're designing it properly for the largest audience. So let's take a look. We'll just jump into this template. Actually, let's jump back out. So I'll walk you through these resources really quickly. We're going to use a couple of these as just demos as we build out our prototype. It's just to save us some time, so we're not designing it here. We're mostly just going to be prototyping. So this Notes app is one of the ones we'll be using. We'll also use the sign-up screen XD UI kit. I included the e-commerce kit here, so you can use that for other projects. We won't really walk through that one, excuse me. But then the sound design kit is going to come in handy. It's from an Adobe designer, Sam Anderson, and he's put together a bunch of sounds that we can use while prototyping. So we'll touch onto that. Those are all linked, but if you do want to find other UI kits, adobe.com. I'm in Canada, so it's /CA, but you'll find the resources tab, and then you can pull up UI kits, all the platform kits, and a whole bunch of other ones from the community. And then this is the sound kit here. So there's 28 sounds that can all be used, and I'll show you how we can use that in our design. So to kick things off, I mean, our main focus here is really visual impairments and making sure our designs are accessible to people with visual impairments. So one of those things that we need to check is contrast. And you can see here I've got my design, I've got it all built out. As I'm going, I might need to check colors. So if we go up to this button, right, I have all my different elements. And again, if you're new to XD, these icons on the bottom left here just allow you to toggle between your assets. So this is all your components, character styles, and colors, your layers here, and then plugins. There are hotkeys for those as well, and you can see those just by hovering over them. So most of the time I'll be using hotkeys probably. But you can see here, this is a bad example. If we take a look at just a simple shape, so if we have a rectangle and a text box, I want to know whether I'm passing accessibility guidelines on my text when I have a button. So if we just call this like a dark button, don't build it inside your design. There we go. So being able to test these layers, I'm sure most of you have used Stark. It's available in some of the other tools as well, so you may be familiar with it already. I'll zoom. There we go. But in this case, you can pretty much imagine that this button combination is going to be accessible already. But to confirm, we can go into Stark, and there's a few different options. So the check contrast tool will allow you to check the contrast between two layers. So it's looking at the text layer on top and then the dark layer as the background. And it'll give you your ratio and your different scores for accessibility. Now, this one's really obvious in the situation of these tags here. If I just copy this out and kind of replicate that, obviously text size does play a role here. The bigger it is, the easier it is to read. And you'll see that on the test. But if I do this, I'm not sure about this. And in this case, this fails because the green on top is not quite dark enough compared to the background. So as I go through my design, I can edit that. I can come in here and start experimenting with my values. And the nice thing is, if I come back to my assets panel, I already have that color here. So remember, I have this across all of my tags. So if I simply edit this color and make this darker, anywhere that that color is going to show up, it's going to change because I've now edited that color. If it actually edited. What is frozen? Good. So yes, I can update a single green across my full design once I get it to a contrast level that I want it to be at. And then you can wait for Stark to do its thing. I'm just going to close this. Okay, we'll be right back. See if I can close this out.
Did it freeze up on you?
Oh yeah, yeah. Yeah, I've got a beach ball spinning. One sec. All right, let's try again.
This is live, people, so we'll always encounter something. It's just...
Especially when you're running pre-release software.
Yeah, in the meantime, you can sign up to get your swag from Adobe on the link there.
Yeah, it's sweet swag.
We just need the code again.
And what's the code?
Yeah, so the code is, one sec. It's Let's XD hyphen 5 V as in Victor, B as in Barry, N as in Nancy. So Let's XD hyphen 5 VBN.
Matt, can you type in the label of the button, the code for the swag?
Sure. Wait, say it again.
The code is, so it's useslingshot.com/Adobe, and the code is Let's XD.
Oh. Let's XD.
Hyphen 5 VN. 5 VBN. V.
N.
B.
V?
Yeah, V as in Victor, B.
There we go.
No, that's not it. So 5,
Oh,
so it's 5 VBN.
VBN.
Yes, there you go.
Perfect. All right.
All lowercase.
There we go. There's your code. And jumping right back in, now that I've applied that color from the assets panel, let's see if this works this time. As I update the color, oh, please don't do that. Really doesn't like that. Okay, this is when you find bugs live. Okay, one more take. I'm not going to show you that feature anymore. I think it's because that green shows up many times. And this is pulled right from a UI kit. So I'm not sure how they built it.
So basically it acts like a color token, right? So
Yeah, exactly.
that green is, wherever that green shows up, if you edit the actual color token in the assets panel, it'll change the color throughout every artboard that it exists in.
Correct. Did I get that right?
Yeah.
Cool. All right. So in this case, I'm just going to use a color picker and pick that color. And then pick this color. Right. And so that failed before, and we'll just reconfirm. And you always want 2 layers selected, otherwise it just won't work. So again, we failed there, but as I make this color darker, I can continually check, and now I can see I'm passing and I'm accessible from a contrast perspective. And again, it gives you a score based on normal text of at least 16 pixels, and then larger text of 18 or 24. So depending on where you're using your text, you can get away with the different colors. And so what on earth? Okay. And then you're able to, in theory, come back to that assets panel, edit this color, and that will propagate anywhere that that color is used. And so that's one of the key differences between, no, I can't unzoom. Wow. That's one of the key differences between using the color in the assets panel and the color in the color picker, is that the assets panel will get used, and you can actually right click, highlight it on the canvas. I'm not going to do it because I don't know what's going to happen, and just see anywhere that you're using that color instance. So if I just jump back, I'm going to open up this one again. See if I can show you in here. So in this case, let's pretend there was text on this tab. And I'm just going to pop over to my assets panel. And all I need to do to add colors into an assets panel is select the shapes or select the whole artboard. Depends on how much I want to add. In this case, I'll just add this shape. And you can see it's added. I can double click on that and call this my selected blue. And so this actually will propagate into something called design tokens or variables when you export this to development. And they can download the CSS variables. So now that I have that selected blue, I'll just make sure it's applied there. Actually, I'll highlight it first, and you can see that it's showing up everywhere. These are really just opacities of the same color. So as I edit that, everything that shows up is going to end up showing up darker. And you can see that change happening as I just pan on the color picker. And then I can basically leave that. Now this is my selected blue. And so that's one way to update globally across your design a particular color. So if you're using a text color, that's where it's valuable to name your colors accurately. So if you're using a specific color for a header text, obviously you can save character styles too. So you would likely just edit them there. So you'd have a button label or a header, link text, things like that. So that's just a quick way to edit those globally to ensure they're all passing contrast. So that's really stark in a nutshell. You can also do colorblind simulation. So if I take this artboard and I click on colorblind simulation, I can go through various different colorblind types. There are some that are only accessible in the Pro subscription, but for the most part, I can just click on these and it's going to give me a preview of how this design is going to look to these different color blindness types. I can change all my zooms, things like that, really dial in. This is a very simple design, of course. And then the other feature that I'm not actually upgraded yet, but rapid contrast checker. With the plugin panel open, you can actually see and get recommendations on colors as you're going through your design. So it might look at the layers you're working in and suggest maybe this red isn't the best one. Maybe you want to go with a darker red. And it'll give you those combination suggestions to really help speed things up. So that is Stark. And with that, we can move into our next kind of core feature here. And one of the things I really like about XD is that I can move from design to prototype and share all very seamlessly in one app. You can see all the tools are up top, prototype, share, and design. And there's now, I think I'm upgraded, there's new hotkeys. So on a Mac, it's if you hold option 1, you can go to design, option 2, prototype, option 3, share, all on the keyboard. So you can quickly toggle between them. That just came out in XD32. And really prototyping has been a core focus of XD in the last year or so. And how do we bring designs to life? And how do we make testing much more feasible and realistic to get better results? So one of my favorite features is auto animate, and that's really the basis for a lot of the prototyping that you can do in XD. Of course, you can do basic dissolves and transitions, overlays, and we'll cover some of that as well. But for those of you not familiar, this is really how auto animate works. We have this tap start of a tab, and we have a tab end. So if I open these up and select this shape, you can see there's this second column of cards that matches what's over here. And so if I just toggle between these, you can see the two artboards essentially have a shifted position of content. So it's really just a position move. The one that's highlighted here is different. And if I just go into prototype mode, select this tab and transition it over, I can set auto animate as my action type. And you can see there's a number there that we're going to get into. There's also a few different trigger types. And then I can go back the other way, and it's going to remember everything for me. So how this looks, this isn't going to be a dissolve. This is actually going to transition the content between its two states on the artboards. So if you're familiar with Apple Keynote, which those opening slides were done in, this is very similar to Magic Move, where you're essentially moving a shape between positions. XD can do masks, do a whole bunch of different things with auto animate. So that's great. Taps are one way to interact, but if you can't see, obviously that's going to be a problem. So not only is there tap triggers, but you can also drag, use keys in gamepad, which I really like, because if you have a particular input device, like perhaps a Braille keyboard or a game controller that you're testing on, you can actually connect the buttons on there to different commands and actions. So if in particular I want to wire up, I just have a regular keyboard here, but I can basically type any key on the keyboard and map it to an action. So maybe I'll just use T here, but again, you could connect a Bluetooth input device and map those keys to your design. So in this case, if I hit T now, it's gonna, again, auto animate. If I hit it again, I don't have it wired back yet, but I can do that really easily. And the nice thing in XD is that you can stack these interactions. So I can keep a tap, but I can also apply the T again just as a toggle. And now, oops, I should define the destination. So now just using a T on a keyboard, I can now interact with this prototype, which opens up the door for a lot more interaction types. I'm not tied to the mouse or a mobile device. I can now interact with it in new ways. So that came out. That was super helpful. But what if I want to take this a step further and add on a voice interaction? So in the same way as tap and gamepad, I'm going to just click and drag and add another one. And you can see now I have this number 2. So I have keys gamepad and keys T. So I'm going to just change this one to voice. And I believe this is built on kind of an Alexa backend. So the engine and everything that runs this is one that's familiar and fairly robust. All I have to do to make a voice trigger is enter in the command. So in this case, maybe I want this to be next tab. So I can just type it in, and because I can stack, I can set up multiple triggers along the way so that I can capture a larger range of potential voice commands that people might use. So if some people are more polite and say, please send me to the next tab, you could include that. I'm just going to start with this one. Excuse me. And so now we have not only the T, but the voice, and then you can also include the drag and tap. What's going to happen is when I play this, to initiate the voice interaction, you hold spacebar on the keyboard. So once you hold that, then you can just say the command into your mic, and it's going to recognize that and count that as a trigger. So now I got to remember what I said. I said next tab. Next tab. Next tab. There you go. So just like that, you can use a voice. And then what you can do is on an artboard, so on individual artboards, you can use something called a time trigger. And so if I click on this plus, you can either use the plus up there or just click on the arrow here, and then it's going to just look like it's going nowhere. But you can set it to time. And then if we set that as a 0-second delay, we can actually choose an action that will take place on this artboard. So if I do something like audio playback or speech playback, I can actually give feedback verbally and audibly to a user. So Now let's call this the My Feed tab. And of course, you can select different voices. So now when I do this, what's going to happen is my voice command is going to transition me to this artboard. And then 0 seconds after I arrive here, it's going to trigger the speech playback that will say my command. So fingers crossed, all the audio works here. I'm sharing through Zoom. Next tab.
You're on the My Feed tab.
And there you go. So just like that, you can create kind of a conversation back and forth. I haven't used that voice before, but you can experiment with different ones and get a different look and feel, or sound and feel, I guess. So that's really the basics here. You can also set this up. So maybe we don't want speech playback, maybe we want audio playback. And so to do that, you can simply just add in a file. And so I've got that XD sound kit, and we can put in, I haven't actually listened to all these, so these probably aren't what you want. Let's go with the ding. So once you add that in, it's going to play that audio file rather than a speech playback. Next tab. So you can use audio to provide that feedback or give guidance as to how to navigate the app. So those are the features in a really basic format. I want to open this up and go to that.
I wanted to know one thing too.
Sure.
So when you guys jump into XD and using auto animate, one thing to always be keen on is your naming conventions in your layers, because if
Yes.
the name of one object on one artboard isn't the same as the same object on the other artboard, you're going to run into some issues. So definitely make sure that the names are consistent.
Yeah. So just here, these are both rectangle 1, and their properties are changing. If I changed either of these, so if this is 13 now, that's not going to work. Next tab. It won't work on the way back. Oh, it did. Great. Usually that's not going to work. Okay. So I'm just going to pull open the sign up screen UI kit. So this is available in that download section. And so this is a great UI kit created by Exopixel, or Marissa Blair is her name. And there's a whole bunch of resources here. So feel free to, I'm not sure of the rules on the design challenge, but these are some assets that you can use. And we'll just walk through a little flow here and show you how you can use this, use the voice and audio in a sign up flow. So I'm just going to pull it over here so it's out of the way. And so this is like a basic question and answer kind of workflow. So depending on the questions that you have, you might want to tune this one way or another. And so let's just start. In this case, I have a sign up form. I've probably come from somewhere else, right? But we'll just focus on this. So we can actually make the XD prototype speak to us and read out what is on a screen. So it's not quite like a built-in screen reader, but we can use these features to create that type of effect and guide people along the journey. So again, we'll want to go to prototype mode. And first off, we'll want to set up this page. So since it's going to be the first page, I might add a slight delay, but I'm just going to add that interaction, go to the time trigger. Let's just make it 0.6 this time. give it enough time to load. You can experiment with that, of course. And in this case, I just want some speech playback. And you can, of course, define how much of the screen you want to read through. And you might want different artboards set up here. These are just some samples, so I'm actually going to move these out of the way because we might need a duplicate here. But with this, I can just start reading through. So I'm going to assume that earlier on we've created the context that we're in the sign-up flow using voice, and this is now the first step. So we can just jump in. You can call it step 1 of 3. And the way the speech works is it will try and read through your kind of breakdown of text in the box. So I just did an enter there. I'm going to leave a line space, and I can show you how it reads these differently based on how you format it in this box. So how old are you? Step 1 of 3. So, I mean, you can include this if you'd like, but I'm just going to show you how this plays.
Step 1 of 3. How old are you?
So just like that, you can hear that it's reading through this box. And if I pull this back up and just play it like that, you're going to see it's very different.
Step 1 of 3. How old are you?
Which isn't, that's kind of gaining some speed. It might be a little too fast. So just remember that it's essentially reading your entry here like it would normal text. So I'm going to leave it like that. That's our first prompt. And then what we can do is that we can actually have somebody then give a command back. And that's what will transition us to the next screen. So in this case, perhaps I'm going to have this screen be the age filled in. So then we can change this and set this to 25. So now we're going to want to essentially auto animate between these, but our trigger is going to be, actually we can do one more. We'll do a confirmation in the middle. So this is likely to look almost inactive until we enter in a text. So again, we've got our voice thing here, and then I'm going to just apply a voice transition. So there's some states on this text field. You can put a voice command on really any element. It doesn't really matter. I'm going to add it here to the artboard. And we can just add in the command of 25. And then in this case, oops. Okay. And then we're going to do a speech playback. So we've got our time trigger that does the initial speech playback. And then on the voice command where you enter, don't actually need this. Now I can create another speech playback, just confirming that.
I think you're doing it on the wrong artboard.
Oh yeah, actually, you're right. So now I want that to go to this one. Good catch. So now this is going to sound like.
Step 1 of 3. How old are you?
Spacebar and say 25.
Step 1 of 3.
And it did that.
How old are you?
Prototype. So in this case, we can actually remove that time trigger. And then here, we'll want this to be, you entered 25. Would you like to continue? Of course, you can include this or not. You could just rely on the interaction here. But in this case, then on this next button, perhaps I want to add in the voice, and I say yes, continue. And then again, we'll auto animate this over to our magazine sign up too. And so now this flow is going to look like this.
Step 1 of 3. How old are you?
25.
You entered 25. Would you like to continue?
Yes, continue. And then that's the first step complete. We can start building out what's your email. So in the same way, we'll use that same approach and really build out probably 2 of these. When you are in prototype mode and you're copying and pasting things, it's going to copy and paste the links with it. So that's helpful unless you don't want them copied and pasted. Then I just recommend popping back to design mode. And once again, here we can dial this down. You can also have a state set up, which I don't, but you can set up a state so that you can just toggle to it. So in the same way, right here, now that we've landed on this page, we can set up a time delay first that will give us a speech playback. And to keep with our pattern, we'll keep this step 2 of 3. What is your email? And so just like that, then we can set up the voice. And in this case, let's see if it recognizes this one. Emails are interesting, and how this engine works is that it will try and just capture as much as it can. So likely what will happen is I can probably say at XOPixel. I'm actually going to make this an easier. Let's try it. See if it works. But it might just capture this end bit and progress from that. I may not need to say the whole thing. So it's trying to kind of do some gray matching just so that it doesn't have to be exactly precise. So there's your voice trigger. And then again, we're going to go auto animate to 1. And I won't go all the way back to the beginning.
Step 2 of 3. What is your email?
contact@xopixel.com. And so just like that, I didn't enter it in here, but we can do that. So it can even recognize emails fairly well, which is really helpful. It means that you can put in more complex items. And from a language perspective, it works with the language that XD is running in at the time. So if your XD and your computer is running in a different language, then the voice will actually be compatible with that language.
Step 2 of 3. What is your email?
contact@xopixel.com. And then once again, we can repeat that process coming into the create a password flow. I won't repeat this one because we've done it twice now. But this gives you a good idea of how you can use the speech and voice commands going back and forth to create this login flow. And really the only interaction with the computer is holding the space bar. Everything else is audible. And once again, I mean, you can pair this in with sounds. So we'll just complete this last one. And we'll do time. And we'll go speech playback. Oops. Probably not a good idea to switch voices partway through. And then again on this, we'll go in and add a voice. And you can see here that I've got, oh, never mind. magazine sign up mobile 3. So just like that, then I've got that. What we can do is we can go in and we can add a audio playback here. Maybe we'll pull in this ding again. And there we go. We'll do this just to mix it up so it's not voice the whole time.
Step 2 of 3. What is your email?
Contact at exopixel.com.
Would you
Yes,
like to continue?
So you can pair in that audio to let people know that the transition's happened. And in that case, if you do want to pair up kind of an audio and then go into a speech, what you can do, I think it was on this one, is you could actually duplicate. So I'm just holding Alt while I drag this out. And then rather than set up, so we have that voice trigger here, and then you have the time that goes to audio playback. You could also set that up to go to speech instead. But we'll leave it as a ding for now. So there's the login flow. I'll leave it there. Hopefully you were able to follow along. Why don't we, do you want to do questions, Jonathan?
Yeah, we were
just at this stage.
Yeah, so everyone, if you have any questions, feel free to unmute yourself and ask any questions to Matt about what you just learned.
I have a
Matt, this
question.
is really good. This is Peter McNally. I've got a question with this. So you could, in theory, you could prototype a screen reader interaction by using the voice and speech output, right? Potentially.
Yeah. You just have to be explicit about giving them the command of the text on the screen. It's not going to read it itself. You just have to manually enter that. But yeah, you can.
Right. So all the text you have to put in that box that you want to be read out.
Correct.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
No, this is looks very, very neat, very, very interesting.
Glad to hear it.
Matt, I'm curious, can it do inputs based on your audio? I mean, it's obviously recognizing what you're saying through the engine because it knows it's matched what you've entered. Can you actually have it show up what you say?
Like display what you say?
Yeah.
You can show errors. So this is Cameron here. I'm the Adobe, I'm an Adobe employee. If you go to the playback and you hit the right arrow and you're playing back a prototype with a little down arrow caret next to recording.
Would you like to continue?
Show notifications will show when the command was not matched. So that's a mechanism to understand what the system is hearing versus what it might be matching against. And that's a useful way to say, like, rideshare, like let's say the name of your application is rideshare. The system might be hearing ride share, like the musician share, and it's not going to hear anything differently. So you can just set the voice command to match what it is trying to hear. It's kind of a workaround to like the nuances of voice recognition.
Okay, but it won't, even though it's capturing the text from your voice, you can't get it to display that text other than
I mean, the way you would do that if you wanted to prototype, let's say like automatic captioning, right? You would just put the text that you match against in the next artboard. So like you just copy paste from the speech playback and paste it into the next artboard. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, so that's all that's being done here. I basically copied out this command and entered that into this input field here.
Yeah, but
to show you,
I think what she's saying is like, let's say when the screen reader is saying step 2 of 3, what's your email? Usually some type of caption pops up, and I think there's where you would have to add a separate I guess, component with that written out at the bottom of like a page or something. Is that what you were kind of referring to, Laura?
Well, I was just thinking from a testing standpoint, always trying to get to the most realistic test as possible. If I'm testing with someone and it says, what's your age? And they say 43 and it says, you've entered 25, is that correct? Or whatever. It's like, no, I said 43. So you have to almost lead them to say the things you want them to say in order for it to work, as opposed to, or type in every possible answer.
Yeah. So age is a tough example on that because there's so many options. But yeah, a lot of it will need to be guided. You can kind of create logic in a sense where if I had a copy of this with a different email, like if this was hello, from this command here, this voice, because I can stack voice commands on top, I can go ahead and add another voice command here. And this one can be the other email. Again, you do want it to match. But then in this case, I have, if I pull that up, there I go. Wherever that went, I can basically set the destination of the other voice one to be another flow. So in theory, I could have 4 or 5 different flows here with different voice commands from the same place, and then have them go to a new destination. So that's one way to capture different options. But yeah, in terms of automatically displaying the text verbatim from what you say, that's not there at the moment.
Thank you. I do have one follow-up question, Cameron, from what you said with the ride share and ride share. In the entry in the voice response, how do you add multiple voice responses? You would just need to add a second interaction for every single one, and they will all go off to the same and make each one auto animate.
Wait, can you repeat that? Maybe someone else understood better than I did.
So if I say ride share and I type in RIDESCHARE, and then I realize that the engine is picking up RIDECHER, I could take that second option and put it in there so either one will work. To do that, do I set up a second interaction voice trigger, or can I put multiple commands in one trigger?
You set up a separate interaction trigger because one, you can have multiple interactions on an object. It's just how bad is doing it right.
Perfect. Thank you.
So each of those would be different.
Thanks for this. I have a quick question. Can we, let's think about design systems. Can I attach, like Peter was referring earlier, if I try to mimic the assistive technology response, can I add that response to the actual input component, and I will always have a placeholder to change the label?
Yeah, so with prototyping, let me go here. So this button here, in design, you'll see this is an instance of a component. So Cameron, feel free to correct me if I get the voice stuff wrong, but right here, we've got our main component that is a button. And so generally with anything prototyping, this is a main component, this is an instance, and any changes you make to the instance apply to that one property. Anything you do to the main will apply to an instance unless it's already been overridden on the instance. So this applies to prototyping too, where you can connect essentially linkages to a main component, and then those can apply to every instance of it. But if you connect it to just a button, it's only going to apply to that. So in theory, yes, you can set up a component that has these commands on it. In terms of response, not as much, because that's going to be on an artboard if you're using a time trigger. So the time trigger itself can't really be saved because it's on an artboard. But the voice commands themselves, so your inputs should be able to on a main component right here.
And I can override that.
Yeah. So if you set one up, you should be able to. So yeah, if I add in a voice interaction, hello voice, you can see it's should be applying here.
Matt, did you add a command?
Oh,
The interaction won't save.
This is fascinating, by the way. So it opens up a number of opportunities that we never had before as product designers. So.
That's really cool.
Now, Matt, I
One
know.
other.
Go
I
ahead.
would, I would so love for us to have a follow-up night one of these days where it's like we come back with 4 totally different use cases for this. Like somebody's designing a voice UI, somebody's mimicking a screen reader, you know, somebody's testing out like a kiosk system. You know, it'd be awesome to come back, you know, sometime in the future and be able to showcase all these different use cases.
Yeah, that'd be
Yeah.
cool. So would it be
There's
possible
actually,
to create some, I don't know XD very well, but do you have the concept of like, I don't know what you call it, like a library where you could have like a screen reader library that you could then, you know, build out prototypes, you know, with that interaction or a voice? I mean, because I mean, you don't want to be doing everything from scratch every time.
Yeah. So today, if you go to this assets panel, let me move zoom here. You can actually save your audio files automatically save, but really only the audio files at this point save into your assets panel. And so from this assets panel, if I'm using a cloud document, which I'm not right now, this is just a local document. But if I save this as a cloud document, I can then add it, import it into any other document. So using this little plus up at the top, I can open up a cloud document and pull all my assets. That's all my colors, character styles, components, and then audio files. So I don't need to reload. So I can set up like an audio file library. I'm not sure if there's plans on the speech side of that because they are just text commands at this point. But audio you can include in a library today.
There's a couple of ways to do what you're describing. One is a template. That's really the best way to do the voice commands and the text, the keyboard commands. So with screen readers are almost entirely keyboard driven. So, and I actually have a template on Behance that has like voiceover shortcuts along with speech playback and a bunch of other stuff that I guess I'll share on Meetup or something. But that's the way you would manage like a template for a screen reader is through like an existing XD file.
Hey, Matt. So I know that you're working on a pre-release version. So from what we can download, are all of these features currently available? Or is there anything here that you've shown us today that perhaps is still kind of pre-release?
Yeah. So I just have a pre-release on my machine. This is actually the current release XT32. So everything you see here is live and available. The voice stuff has been out for almost a year, Cameron, I think.
Max 2018 is the launch of the voice
There
commands.
you go.
Got it. So Cameron, I'm not sure how long you guys been with Adobe, but I remember back from my Adobe Max days and working with Flash I'm going to be dating myself a little bit here. But there was this whole concept around nesting in components. Can you talk a little bit about how that works within Adobe XD? I'll share with you just a little bit of context around that. So typically in my work, we do a lot of early stage prototyping for either companies or individuals. But one of the biggest challenges that I've found with tools like Principle or tools like even Just in Mind is how you do that nesting where you may have one behavior, let's say in a button, but then you want that button to link you to 2 or 3 layers up or down. how does that work, whether that's on voice or any other thing as it relates to the prototyping capabilities here in XD?
Speaking to
Okay.
voice specifically, voice just works the way any other trigger would. Same with speech playback and audio playback. They're just action triggers and actions. I can't really speak in detail to the nesting, so I guess.
Yeah. Do you want to repeat yourself on the nesting part about the like going levels
Yeah,
up
so
and down?
let's say it's an example. If you have components, right, which I see you have some of those here.
Yep.
One of the biggest challenges that, you know, I've had in the past with other prototyping tools is that you may have a nesting of a button inside of a form, and then that form may be part of one actual layout. You want to link from a specific button to 2 or 3 layers up, right, through parents into another either screen or another flow. Can you do that with XD?
Yeah, yes, I think if I'm understanding you correctly, you can. So I need a more complex component than a button. But let's see, if we make this whole thing a component, you can see that, and there are some improvements coming to nested components.
Mhm.
So this is just how they work today, but there's work going into improving how these work, and like how you update a main component that's in a main component.
Right.
So stay tuned for that, but this is just today. So you can see I have this button, and then I've got this overall component.
Mhm.
Components themselves can be linked, so I can select this whole thing and go to prototype mode, zoom, and link off of this if I want to. But the nice thing about XD is I can select any of these elements in here, like right down to the eye. I can get like right into the actual line of the eye and
Mhm.
link off of that. So if I'm setting this up as a main component with all of my global links, which this would be because this is a main, I can set up links, and I can set up multiple links on individual elements, and they can go different places. So one component doesn't have to link to the same place every time. And then just like on this button, this is that main component. So in design mode, you can see that's the main, that's the instance. By default, the instance takes that same setting for the prototype, but I can go in and override on the instance. I can say when I click on button, I want this to go somewhere else and choose another destination. So I'm not sure if that's kind of what you're looking for.
Yeah, a little
in
bit.
terms
So
of
I think
levels.
what we've used this in the past, if let's say you have a back button, right, and then there could be
Yeah.
some general
Mm.
global behaviors where if you click back, regardless of where you put that component or that master component that has, like in the example that you have, if you move your screen to the main layout,
What?
you'll see there's a back button. You would have
Yeah.
that main header as one master component, and no matter where you
Oh,
put that,
she's
the
fine.
moment you put back,
Yeah,
it'll
she's
basically
watching
take
that
you.
in.
It'll basically take you to the previous screen globally, right? So things like that, that is just, I wonder if you guys from the Adobe team have thought about ways of doing more of this smart interacting between components or nested components leading into specific areas of your prototype experience.
Yeah, there's definitely thought going into it. I'm not really sure where that might fit roadmap wise or how that actually comes out. I've seen concept ideas floating around in a similar vein, I think. But yeah, I mean, in this case, you'd probably just end up doing instance overrides for the back
Yep.
button and going back and forth that way.
And this is kind of, akin to what I was mentioning earlier, right? Of like, how do you do, and I think that's where the industry's headed for the most part, when you look at other prototyping tools that are out there, right? And the fact that you guys are kind of playing, it's an interesting approach, right? Because you're doing all your design, you're doing everything inside of the same tool, as opposed to the current workflow, which is now you're using a tool like Sketch or any other tool to do your designs, and then you're bringing that into a prototyping tool. So I really like the approach of having everything into one tool. Right now, I think as we've seen with my company and some of the work that we're doing is really challenging when you're building really complex interfaces where you have a lot of nesting. That's, I think, sometimes where, making that shift, from maybe the workflow that we have right now to maybe removing some of the prototyping tools and doing XD for all of our work, those are the things that typically come to mind in terms of like, how do we replicate the experiences that we're building without kind of running into any sort of limitations or making sure that we can address some of the needs that we have right now for like conditional formatting as an example, right? Or conditional logics where you may have one form, I think as Lauren was mentioning, but then depending on what you type, there's a formula you can put into that'll take you to screen 1 or 5, or even just capture the inputs that you had from the previous field, and it'll basically populate them into a different one. So I know you guys are still kind of working through a lot of these, but I'm just curious if that's something that's in the roadmap, or how do you guys planning on implementing things like that?
Joel, I'd recommend going on Twitter. Like, I mean, personally, I'm not actually on the XD team anymore anyways, so I can't speak to it. But no, I mean, seriously, like people are super active on the XD team on Twitter. And there's also a user voice that has like super active conversations directly with the XD product team. So your message will get through.
I wanna give other folks an opportunity to ask questions. Maybe three more questions. I know Aurelia wants to ask a question earlier.
Oh yeah, hi, it's Aurelia. Hi, Cameron. I'm from the New York area, so I know the A11Y group for accessibility. Question, I think what Lauren was saying about testing. If I'm gonna test a prototype that I've introduced voice prompts to, would you recommend that I also put in the visuals? Because if I'm testing with a person who's vision impaired, is it gonna matter, or should I just put both in and maybe use the prototype for two user groups?
It's a good question.
You know, it's interesting. Voice is not, this is my personal opinion, like voice is really difficult to user test in a prototype because there's so many possible scenarios that you'd have to cover that really prototyping for voice excels at like stakeholder presentations, sort of controlled environments where you don't have a lot of background noise, where you kind of have a couple things queued up, like Wizard of Oz kind of style prototyping. But if you're doing like usability research, that's not really the best format because you're not gonna be able to predict with enough accuracy. I mean, you could create a very narrow focus, but you're gonna get messier data. So that said, if you're doing any sort of assistive tech, sort of like prototyping, the keyboard commands, the voice commands for dictation, and the speech playback and the audio file playback, like you can demonstrate, you could design a new assistive technology with XD. You could create your own screen reader demo. And that's like where this is really cool, is that all of these things come together into like potentially prototyping new modes. But for user research, at best you'd want to have a guided user research session where you'd have a couple of different flows, and then if someone goes way off the rails, you could guide them back.
Well, I mean, it could be something like in the auto industry, something with just a temporary impairment, which is if you've seen the Audible books, how they actually have a different interface for the drive mode. They have bigger things, so it could be a temporary impairment, like I lost my glasses kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, with accessibility, I think the more modes, the better, right? Like, if you can present a visual with audio, if you can present text with a visual, like these are all giving different people with different abilities, different entry points into the same content, and that's the ideal. Like Alexa's great if you're blind, but it might not be great if you're deaf. But the Amazon Echo Show kind of solves both of those problems because it has a display and audio. So trying to really create rich prototypes that have multiple entry points is going to serve accessibility.
Okay, thank you.
And I think we have Robert here. Robert, you had a question. I see you have your hand raised here.
Hey, yes, thanks. Our company's just beginning to look at creating an accessibility capability, and we're part of that, we're looking at companies and tools that, you know, focus on the final product, the website, and testing code and whatnot. But you know, I'm trying to also research the top flow of the whole process, where, you know, it begins in the design phase, right? So I was interested in the feature you showed earlier, the color contrast checker, and, you know, what are some other, you know, testing tools that designers can take into account? You know, are there going to be things like testing font sizes and testing the forms to make sure they're, you know, compliant, and that sort of thing? So does Adobe XD, you know, have anything beyond the color contrast checker?
So Stark is the primary one that I'm aware of. I'm not sure if you know any others, Cameron.
Stark uses an algorithm that checks the contrast based on the relative font size.
Yeah.
So like its font size is usually, in terms of a compliance requirement, has to do with legibility, especially around color contrast. So Stark is great for this.
Okay, great.
In terms of other functionality, XD is a really robust extensibility platform. I know recently there was an assistive technology plugin developed by a Portuguese developer. Jonathan, you might know this better than I do, but yeah, that one. Thank you. Thanks, Matt. That allows someone using a switch access to control the canvas. So it's a long-winded way of saying there's a lot of access into the internals of XD that you can use to build more sophisticated tools like this. But right now, those are the two that I know.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
Yeah.
Sorry, can you just read that name of the canvas control? What is that?
Yeah, that's the Lilian canvas control. Okay. And the Lilian name comes from the person who was inspired the plugin.
Cool.
And there's actually a blog post about it as well.
Oh, cool. Just, I know I already asked a question, but just a quick question on the keyboard control. So in the demo, you were using the T key. Could you use like multiple keys? Like obviously on screen there will be tab and then shift tab to go backwards. So could you do like a shift tab or multiple, like I know VoiceOver has lots of key combinations. Is that possible?
Yeah, so if we just pull this over, I'm used to having two screens and Zoom is all over the place here. We go keys and gamepad. Yeah, if I do like Shift T or Command Shift L, it's gonna record everything that I'm putting in there. So any combos, letter keys are only going to be. What's that?
The only key it doesn't handle is space, and that's because it conflicts with the voice commands.
With the voice, yeah.
Sorry,
any letter is only going to be singular, but you can combine the modifiers in front of letter.
Okay. And I'm sorry, what did you call it? Keys and gamepad?
Yep, keys and gamepad. So this works the same that if you connect like a PlayStation or an Xbox Bluetooth game controller, what you're going to see in front of this is when you click the button, you'll see a little gamepad icon in front, and then it'll display the key that or the button that you pressed on the game controller.
Cool. Yeah, no, I think people were asking about, user research and usability testing. I see this as a great tool in conceptual user research. I mean, obviously, the closer you get to the development, the more you can, test the HTML. But I think if you're just testing a concept and you want to see it even like make sense to the user, if you could do this like, a piece of functionality, not presenting out the whole thing, I can see a lot of value here for, getting folks with disabilities involved in user research early on.
For sure. Yeah. Saves you a lot of time setting up a project and all the tech behind it just to find out that your idea is not going to work. Ideally it works, but.
Jonathan, how are we doing on time?
I think we're good. Matt, if you have something else to showcase, by all means, but I think you covered a lot of the features here. How do you feel? You feel like you got one more in you, or you want to jump into the goods for the design challenge?
Yeah, I was just going to go over a couple other resources. So Cameron mentioned User Voice. This is a great place to go. You can see kind of what everyone else is talking about and looking for in XD. So definitely leave your ideas here. The product team's always going through, and you can kind of get updates on what's happening, what they're looking at. And then Twitter, of course, like everyone on the product team, pretty much right up to the VP of Adobe XD is active on Twitter. So use the hashtag Adobe XD or mention XD, and we're always taking a look at tweets. So yeah, those are great ways to get feedback and kind of ask questions. And then in terms of UI kits, we showed a couple. I gave you links. If you do want to experiment with voice a bit more, there's also this Amazon Alexa UI kit. So you can build out an Alexa workflow, an assistant, and it works with all of these really. So this is a great resource to go to if you're looking for kits to just experiment with it. So, and then the sound kit, those are all included in this resources link. But yeah, I think that pretty much covers it on my side. I'm looking forward to seeing what you guys come up with.
All right. All right, so let me share my screen. All right, so the design challenge, I mean, hopefully you guys got a lot of takeaways from what Matt presented. So we got top 3 winners. First place wins 1 year free subscription to the Adobe Creative Cloud, and second place and third place will win 6 months free. The way that's going to work is you're going to get 2 codes for 3 months. So you'll get 3 months free, and then when that is over, you apply the other 3 months in order to get the full 6 months free of the Adobe Creative Cloud. So what the challenge is, basically to build a prototype on an accessible login pattern for a website using Adobe XD. So make sure it's desktop. I mean, if you want to go mobile, that's fine, but I think desktop would be best because we definitely want to see some of your keyboard trigger interactions. And then, consider the user. So user type here is visually impaired and blind. Extra credit, if you really want to get on the top 3, show us what it looks like to when a user receives an error. So if they input the wrong password, what does that sound like? How do they go about resetting their password? Little things like that will definitely give you some extra kudo points. Tips, basically just use the features what you learned today: voice command, keyboard triggers, audio playback, voice playback. Plenty of resources out there in that Google Doc. I added some extra links on top of the links that Matt provided, and definitely look out for that link on the meetup page. So what we're looking for, we definitely want to see your research. We want to see how you synthesize what you learned and applied it to your design, and definitely show us how you innovated, right? From strategy conceived to strategy executed, where in between did you kind of figure out a way to, I don't know, make something new, make something creative that still is within the constraints of today's available technology. So, last meetup, and I'll also give a link to the video for the last meetup, we talked about maybe humanizing, the audio feedback, right? When a user, is navigating through a website, what we're hearing is a little bit more robotic. Maybe we can, I don't know, put some emotion behind it, something to think about. And just show us some good use of visual design fundamentals with your voice interactions as well, and keyboard navigation. So, balance in your design, using contrast, relying on Stark to make sure that you are using proper contrast between colors and typography and things like that. So the submission requirements would be basically just a simple case study and presentation format. We just want to see how you think. This is the UX process here. You don't have to do the full process, but it'd be nice to just understand like what you found, what you learned, how you kind of define that information, where in the ideation process did you come up with a solution to, create that prototype. And, with the submission link, there'll be space for you to provide or upload your XD file so we can just inspect it, see, you know, on the back end what it looks like and how, you know, well organized you were. And then also in your Google Slides, provide a link to a live prototype with directions so that, you know, if you do have keyboard triggers and stuff like that, we need to know, you know, in that flow, what keys or voice commands we need to apply in order to navigate your prototype. And the submission deadline is Friday, September 25th. So it's giving you basically 22 days. You know, a lot of you are probably busy professionals and you don't have the time. So this is definitely more for the, you know, students who have time or anybody just looking to add something to their portfolio. And, you know, last thing, just be creative. This is Adobe. You just want to see how you think and what you come up with. So yeah. Let me make sure everyone, is everyone okay with, or knows how to get to the meetup page in order to get the link to the doc? So I want to make sure.
Will this be on the meetup, these slides you just showed?
No, do you want, I can definitely provide that to you
Yeah,
guys.
just so we have the,
It'll be good.
these are the rules, right, that you kind of went through. Are those available somewhere?
Sure.
That'll be a good idea.
Hi, it's Aurelia. Any restrictions on assets? Do you need attributions for the images? Any of that?
No, no. I mean, you know, it's
Yes, well, you know, that's definitely an extra credit. It's like how accessible can you make your interface? So look, let me just touch a little bit on this challenge. We're not asking for free work. This is to empower the community to have a thought process on how to build accessible prototypes. And we've been volunteering for years, and we got to a maturity level that we can start thinking about people with disabilities with a different approach, right? So instead of taking accessibility by compliance, let's really shift left and take accessibility by design. And this is where we have the honor to have Adobe XD presenting tonight, because they are really the only tools right now that can provide that type of features. But we also encourage other prototyping tools or desktop publishing tools to help us, help our industry create more accessible prototypes geared towards people with accessibility. I really commend Jonathan for organizing this event tonight. Thanks, Matt, for presenting. I do have a question though that again, I didn't get to ask, is regarding if I'm building a mobile prototype and mobile has a very different way of dealing with screen readers. Can I touch, and as I touch, I get the voice feedback?
I believe it's a press and hold on the screen. I haven't done it in a while.
That's okay.
But
so
there's another way to do it. It's not like a press on the different areas and get voice. It would be similar to like a single action like space.
This is more like thought-provoking questions to inspire all the designers here that are still learning about accessibility to go out and research how screen readers react on a web browser, how screen readers react on a mobile phone. Go ahead.
Oh yeah, sorry. I know that Apple iOS has some accessibility features in the settings. When we submit a prototype, should we let you know whether we're using Material Design or iOS? Because that would affect it, right? Or no, because we're not doing it for mobile, we're doing it for desktop.
Desktop, right?
However, Jonathan thinks the challenges is leading.
Yeah.
For desktop, but I mean, you know, if you feel like you want to go that route, I mean, it'd be still interesting to see. I just kind of kept it in those constraints of desktop because I definitely wanted to see, you know, people doing keyboard triggers and stuff like that. But if you want to do mobile, that's fine. And, you know, in your deck, when you submit, just, you know, specify like why you went that direction and everything that you came up with.
Okay. Thank you.
Well,
Thank you. Thanks, Cameron, for stepping in and providing some advice. Really happy to see you here. Any other questions? Any final questions? Anything that you want to give us as a feedback tonight? This is a series on accessibility, like product design with accessibility in mind, and we are evolving to start presenting a series on inclusive design, which, you know, just keep in mind. So this will continue to evolve. So definitely want to see you all back here and continue to learn with us.
and yeah, make sure you guys go to the UX and Fajitas page. Everything will be there for you. The link to submit is here, and then the doc link is here, and then Marcelo will upload the slides in the comment section as well, so that you guys have access to that.
Okay, so you don't have a, yeah, I can definitely upload. One last question though. Did everyone get the chance to sign up for the swag? Do you want to repeat the instruction?
Yeah, it's right here.
All right, take a screenshot of that. Adobe will send like 300 swag bags to each one of you.
Get it while it's hot, because who knows, they might run out.
Thanks
Hey,
again.
Jonathan, I got a question on design challenge. So I'm teaching a class actually on accessibility next week. Could I get some of my students involved in this? Is that okay, or is it only the folks who are actually at the meetup can participate?
No, you can get them involved. We'll place the recording for this session,
Okay.
and probably on the meetup page as well, and they can watch and they can learn what Matt taught us tonight, and they have equal rights. I'm not sure if they're going to be able to get the Adobe swag. So
That's all right.
Joe, back to you.
You're on mute, Joe.
Can you guys hear me now?
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, this was awesome. Thank you guys. Jonathan, big ups for organizing this, Matt, and everyone else that kind of stayed up a little late. I appreciate all of you guys. I know the team, both from IxDA, UX and Fajitas. In terms of just, as the community continues to evolve on this whole concept of accessibility, I don't know, Claudia, maybe you want to say some words in terms of, like, if we're prototyping with accessibility in mind, are there any resources, Claudio, that you could provide just to help people say, hey, look, I don't know how screen readers work, or maybe we can add them to the same list, just so that people have a context of what things are right now, so that we can be better prepared or equipped to do these prototyping using any of the tools. Obviously, XD being a primary one for voice, but those are the things that I'm just curious if there's anyone on the webinar today that either has never used a screen reader or is not familiar with them. I know we've done a series of them, but if you're new, or I know we have a lot of new faces here, is there anything that kind of stands out? Any questions that you have before we kind of wrap up? And then as we kind of go through that process, I don't know if Cameron, Matt, if you guys have any contact or anything that people get in touch with you. I mean, obviously this is something that we're all very much vested in, making sure that tools like Adobe XD, among others, that are really taking at the forefront of accessibility, that we have a vibrant community. I know you guys gave some links out, but this is something that as we continue to not only engage with these tools, what are some good ways for folks to kind of get involved with this?
I kind of think like the best starting points for working with screen readers, and I know other people might have different opinions, would be, seeing how this is like a pretty Mac heavy crowd probably here tonight. I would imagine that like probably the best place to start is like the accessibility pages or the voiceover pages on the Apple site. So that's one resource. Personally, I use different platforms. So I'll work in Linux, I'll work in Windows, I'll work on the Mac OS. So I use NVDA on my PCs pretty heavily, but I use it kind of in the background. I use the speech viewer to see what it's going to read, but I'll have NVDA muted so that it doesn't drive me crazy. So that's another way of working, and I think it's a good starting point as well. My one piece of advice for somebody starting out: don't use curtain mode, Don't black out your screen, and don't go into starting to use a screen reader without a cheat sheet in front of you with all the commands. Because you could find yourself getting into a situation where you have to reboot your device to get out of the screen reader because you don't know the command to get out of it. So my one piece of advice is make sure you give yourself a cheat sheet, print it out or whatever. That's your safety net to be able to get out of the screen reader. And if there's one piece of advice I would give you is don't get frustrated. There's a real learning curve to working with screen readers, and people, a newly blind person will spend months or years perfecting the use of a screen reader. So think of yourself as a 6-year-old trying to learn how to use a typewriter. It's going to take that kind of time investment. So if something doesn't work on a screen reader because you're just starting out using it, don't assume that it's inaccessible. Make sure that you give a huge benefit of the doubt based on your lack of ability with the screen reader. So it's fascinating, it's interesting, but you do need to give yourself a lot of slack and a lot of latitude to be able to learn it well.
That's awesome. That's great advice, man. And I think, Jonathan, from just as a community, right, how do we continue to provide any support? Is there maybe a Slack channel on Fluxia that we can start for this challenge? So in case people have any questions or anything else, just so that we don't have a gap between now and the end of September, if anyone kind of falls through the cracks, I know Marcelo, Claudia, myself are all part of the Flux Hours, and I know Lauren as well. So we want this to be a success for everyone. And I think the fact that, you guys have very gracefully, provided some resources and I think some incentives, but the biggest incentive, just to kind of wrap things up, is the fact that you're going to get the empathy in designing for interfaces and tools that we, quite frankly, as a community, we're all learning as we go along. And I think, Claudia, you've put it really well in previous series that we've done with this. This is something that there's few experts. We're all kind of working our way through it. But the fact that we're now starting to see these tools, right, that have voice at the forefront of how we can do some of these interactions, I think is extremely exciting. So, Matt, Cameron, thank you so much. Jonathan, amazing work tonight. And yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to, to kind of getting started with this and seeing all the entries from everyone.
Yeah. And if you want, I think you have the slides, Joe, if not Marcelo. Yeah, definitely link these people to the Fluxia channel, get them on board, and that way they can, connect with any of the channels, ask questions. I'm always on Slack, so if anybody has any.
Can I make a comment?
Yeah.
Hi, it's Aurel. I'm sorry but you know what? I was just thinking you guys talked about how UX has changed, design, post-COVID, all that life. Voice is right there because now I don't have to touch anything when you think about it. Like I'm going around with gloves and hand sanitizer, but if everything was voice activated, that might save some lives right there. That was the one point that, yeah, that was really interesting. Also, I was at another accessibility meetup here in New York in the days when we met in person, and a really wise man told me, he says, when you're branding, because I was talking about how we branded, we had to step back because we were not meeting what WCAG, the guidelines. He said, when you start a design system, that's where you start. You bring accessibility in from the very ground with your colors, and not when you're already designing on the screen for screens. But when you choose your branding, those have to meet the contrast compliances. Because otherwise, if I choose 2 colors as my brand colors and there's not enough contrast, then I don't know, I have to rebrand the whole brand. So that was a really wise thing I got from an art director at one of the meetups.
That's great. And I think, I don't know how this, in terms of just getting that, we have so many people here and so many amazing, I think, stories from everyone. I think what we'll probably do is we'll post the Fluxia link inside of the same meetup page, which obviously that's how all you guys got here. And then make sure that we can start a channel to make sure that at least from now until the time that we have any winners announced, we can continue the discussion and have more of this ongoing support and conversation. So
Cameron's way ahead of us.
Awesome. So just wrapping things up, I'm not sure, Marcelo, any announcements, anything going on from other local leaders, any events happening, anything else going on you guys end at UX and Fajitas, UXPA, Lauren, anything else happening later this month, just to make sure we go through? No, no worries. So if there's no other announcements, I think just one thing from IxDA before we wrap up, we do have an ongoing initiative that we've been working on as far as looking at the state of UX. So if you know anyone who is a thought leader, who works at an organization, and who would like to be a part of this research that we're working on, reach out to me, and then reach out to me, Marcelo, and then we'll be sure to include them in our research. And then we'll be doing a follow-up event probably towards the end of this month, beginning of next, with some of the findings and just giving you guys a little more of an update on that. So very exciting. With that, I hand it over to you, Marcelo or Jonathan, to kind of wrap things up. And other than that, man, this was awesome. Thank you so much, guys.
No, thank you again. As usual, we stop recording and we just hang out. If you want to stay and just like, talk about, the wind, and we'll do. Typically we